A single black mother was walking home after a long, exhausting night shift when she suddenly heard a loud crash, followed by a terrified scream. Rushing toward a nearby gas station, she saw a huge Hell's Angel biker collapsed beside his motorcycle, clutching his chest, his face pale and lifeless. He was dying right there on the pavement, and no one dared to help. Without hesitation, she ran to his side, ignoring everyone's warnings, and spent her last $8 on aspirin and water, saving his life in the nick of time. What she didn't know was that her brave act that night would change her life forever. Before we dive into this story, tell us where you're watching from. We'd love to hear your thoughts. The morning light came slow to the little apartment, spreading across chipped counters and a table marked with pencil scratches and old water rings. The heater rattled like it was trying to remember how to work. Emily Johnson sat at the kitchen table, her head bent over a notepad filled with numbers and grocery lists. The coffee beside her had gone cold, but she didn't notice. Across from her, 6-year-old Layla hummed softly as she colored a picture of a sun with too many rays. Outside, Detroit was half awake. The streetlights still glowed orange while the snowmelt whispered down the gutters. Somewhere down the block, a car alarm chirped and then gave up. Emily pressed her pencil eraser against the paper and sighed. The rent was due in 2 days and she was short again. She owed $150 to the landlord, and Layla's inhaler refill cost another $60. Her paycheck from the laundromat would come Friday, but that might as well have been next month. Still, she wrote her 3 nightly gratitudes, a ritual she'd started when her grandmother was alive. Layla's smile. A warm coat, a roof, even a leaky one. She whispered the words as if saying them out loud might make them sturdier. Layla looked up, her crayon paused mid-stroke. "Mom, can we get the pink medicine again? The one that tastes like strawberries?" Emily smiled gently. "We will, honey, just not today." "Okay." Layla returned to her picture, satisfied with the answer. The kettle began to hiss. Emily poured hot water over a tea bag she'd already used once, adding a spoonful of sugar for comfort. The taste didn't matter, it was warm, and warmth counted. At the laundromat, the air was thick with detergent and steam. The machines churned with a steady rhythm, a kind of heartbeat to the room. Emily moved quickly, folding shirts, wiping counters and switching out loads for regulars who slipped her quarters as tips. She had learned the rhythm of tiredness: smile, nod, say thank you, move on. The rhythm kept her upright. An elderly man struggled with a jammed washer, banging it with his palm. Emily hurried over. "Let me help you, Mr. Klein," she said. "I think it's eaten my quarters again." She pressed a hidden reset button under the lid and the machine whirred back to life. "There we go," she said. Mr. Klein laughed softly. "You're a miracle, Miss Johnson." She shook her head. "Just patient." When he left, he slipped 2 crumpled dollars into her hand. She tucked them into her apron without looking. Between loads, she rubbed her wrist and looked out the window. The day was gray and thin, the color of old dishwater. She thought about her car, still parked, still broken. The mechanic's estimate had been $780, a number that might as well have been 1,000. She pulled her phone from her pocket and opened a photo of Layla from Halloween, dressed as a tiny astronaut. It steadied her. Then she turned back to the hum of the dryers. That evening, she walked past the car on her way home, running her hand along the cold metal. "One day, girl," she murmured. "We'll get you running again." The hood was speckled with salt and rain spots. Her shoes were soaked through by the time she reached their building. Inside, she changed quickly and layered a second uniform: black slacks, a white blouse, a maroon apron for the night shift at Murphy's Diner. The diner was a narrow slice of light on a dark street. The bell over the door jingled as she stepped in, and the warm smell of coffee and bacon wrapped around her like an old blanket. "Evening, Johnson," called Manny, the cook. His arms were covered in tattoos, his voice rough but kind. "Evening, Manny." The next 6 hours passed in a blur of plates and orders. Regulars filled the booths, truckers, late shift nurses, a handful of college kids nursing milkshakes and dreams. Emily smiled through the fatigue. When one of the kids came up short on his bill, she covered the rest with her tip money. "It's okay," she said when he apologized. "Just pay it forward someday." He grinned, embarrassed, and promised he would. By closing time, her body ached in every joint. She counted her earnings, $12 in tips. After bus fare and breakfast for Layla, she would have $8 left. It wasn't enough for rent, but it was something. The rain had started again by the time she stepped outside. The air smelled of gasoline and cold metal. Her breath hung white in the dark. She pulled her coat tight and started walking. She was cutting across the gas station lot when she heard the sound, a heavy thud followed by a muffled shout. Turning, she saw a large man collapse near the pumps, his motorcycle helmet rolling away into the gutter. For a second, everything froze. The clerk inside shouted, "Don't go near him." A trucker yelled from his cab, "Leave it, lady. Those bikers bring trouble." Emily didn't move. Her mind flashed back to her grandmother years ago, crumpled in a bus station while people just stared. That helpless image had never left her. She ran. The man was big, bearded, maybe 50. His lips were gray. She could hear a gurgling sound in his throat. She glanced at the convenience store window, 2 men staring, no one moving. "Call 911, she shouted. Inside, the clerk hesitated, then grabbed the phone. Emily sprinted inside, pulled her wallet from her pocket, and dropped her last $8 on the counter. "A bottle of water and aspirin, please, fast." The clerk stared. "He's one of those Hell's Angels, ma'am. You don't, please," she snapped. He handed her the items, and she was gone before the register beeped. Kneeling in the rain beside the fallen man, she tilted his head and slipped the aspirin into his mouth, breaking it with her fingers so he could swallow. "Stay with me," she said. "Come on. You're not going anywhere tonight." His eyes fluttered open, confused. He tried to speak, but she pressed his hand down. "Don't talk, help's coming." When the ambulance arrived, the lights flashed red and white across the wet pavement. She stepped back, trembling, her palms scraped from the asphalt. Another biker roared up, a tall man with long hair and a leather jacket patched with a winged crown. He knelt beside the paramedics. "Jace," he shouted. "Stay with me, brother." Jace's eyes moved toward Emily. He gripped her wrist weakly. "Tell them," he swallowed hard. "Tell them Jace sent you." Then the paramedics loaded him into the ambulance. The second biker stood, looking stunned. "You helped him." She nodded. "He was alone." He pulled a few bills from his pocket. "At least let me repay." "No," she said softly. "I didn't do it for money." He stared at her, something shifting behind his eyes. Finally, he reached into his jacket and handed her a card, black with a silver emblem of a winged crown. "If you ever need anything, call this number. My name's Cole." She slipped the card into her pocket. "Thank you," she murmured, not knowing why. As the ambulance pulled away, the rain began to ease, leaving the street glistening under the lights. Back home, Emily peeled off her wet clothes and hung them over a chair. The apartment was quiet, except for the steady hum of the fridge. Layla was asleep, curled under a blanket, her small chest rising and falling with effort. Emily knelt beside her bed and listened to the breathing, each wheeze a reminder of what still needed to be done. She brushed Layla's hair back from her forehead. "You're okay, sweetheart," she whispered. Then she sat at the table and opened her notebook. Her hand trembled as she wrote, "Grateful for Layla breathing steady tonight. The man is alive, there is still good to be done." She closed the book and let her forehead rest on her hands. Her palms still smelled faintly of rain and aspirin. The next morning, the world seemed oddly quiet. A weak sun fought through the clouds. Mrs. Johnson, the older woman from downstairs, stood on her stoop wrapped in a shawl. "I heard about last night," she said when Emily walked by with Layla. "Word travels fast." Mrs. Johnson frowned. "You shouldn't go helping strangers like that. Folks like him, they bring nothing but trouble." Emily forced a polite smile. "He needed help, that's all. Kindness is good, dear, but too much of it can hurt you." "I'll take my chances," Emily said gently. Mrs. Johnson shook her head but smiled faintly. "You've got your grandmother's stubborn heart." That evening after work, Emily sat by the window watching snow fall under the streetlight. The black card lay on the table beside her teacup. She traced the embossed crown with her thumb. It wasn't fear she felt, more a strange curiosity, like something was quietly changing direction inside her life. The phone buzzed on the counter. For a moment she thought it might be from that card's number, but it was just the pharmacy reminding her about the inhaler refill. She pressed later. She looked toward Layla, asleep again, her small hands curled like petals. Grandma was right, Emily whispered. Kindness doesn't cost much, but it sure does ask a lot. The room fell still. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance, then faded into the night. And Emily Johnson, mother, worker, believer in small mercies, sat by the window with a single thought warming her through the cold. Maybe, just maybe, goodness still matters. The clock ticked toward midnight, and Act 1 closed quietly on a woman who had given her last $8 and unknowingly started a story that would change her life forever. The next morning began with the pale sound of tires hissing over wet pavement. The world looked rinsed clean after the rain, though it carried that thin chill that seeps into your bones before you notice. Emily woke before the alarm. She lay still for a while, watching the soft gray light creep across the ceiling. Layla's breathing was easy now. Light little sighs between dreams. For a moment everything was calm. Then the clock clicked to 6 o'clock, and the familiar rush began. Toast in the old toaster, lunch in a paper bag, scarf around a small neck. Emily moved on instinct, her body remembering the steps even when her mind lagged behind. Her wallet lay on the counter, nearly empty. The only thing inside besides her bus pass was that black card with the winged crown. At the laundromat, the fluorescent lights buzzed. The machines droned like a low song, steady and endless. Emily moved through the motions, folding towels, feeding coins into the slots, wiping away streaks on the counter. Mr. Klein greeted her with his usual half-smile. "You look tired this morning, Miss Johnson." "Just one of those weeks," she said. He nodded. "They all are, lately." She helped him load his laundry and watched the bright fabric spin behind the glass. The hum filled the silence, comforting in a way. But behind the rhythm, her thoughts wouldn't stop circling. The man she'd helped, the look in his eyes, the way his hand had clutched hers before the ambulance doors shut. "Tell them Jace sent you." The words had stayed with her like a faint echo. By noon, she'd earned another few dollars in tips. Her feet ached. As she walked to the small cafe down the block for lunch, Mrs. Johnson's voice from that morning played back in her head. "Too much kindness can hurt you." Emily smiled to herself. "Maybe," she whispered, "but it's the only thing I'm any good at." She bought the cheapest sandwich on the menu and ate it slowly, watching cars pass through the rain-streaked window. When she checked her phone, there was a voicemail. The number wasn't saved, but the voice made her sit straighter. "Hi, this is Cole. The guy from the gas station about Jace. He's awake now. He wanted me to reach out, said you should call. I'll be at Murphy's Diner around 3 if you can make it." Emily froze with half a bite of bread in her hand. She replayed the message twice before setting the phone down. Her first thought wasn't about curiosity, it was about Layla. Who would watch her? Would the neighbors judge? What if these men weren't what they seemed? She pushed the sandwich aside and stared out at the drizzle. He's awake, she thought. He lived, that should have been enough. But something deeper, quieter tugged at her, something about the way Jace's voice had cracked when he thanked her. That afternoon, she took Layla's hand and walked her home from school. The little girl chattered about a new reading game and a classmate's birthday cupcakes. Emily smiled and nodded, though her mind kept drifting back to the card. When they turned the corner, Mrs. Johnson was waiting on her porch. "You heard them bikes this morning?" she asked. Emily shook her head. They came rumbling down the street, 2 of them. Big fellas, woke up the whole block. Emily kept her expression steady. Maybe they were just passing through. Mrs. Johnson's eyes narrowed. "You be careful, Emily. Those men remember faces." Emily nodded politely, but inside, her chest tightened. That evening, she took the bus to the pharmacy. The hum of the engine, the faint smell of diesel, the chatter of strangers, it was all part of her daily landscape. She went straight to the counter, handed over the prescription, and waited. The pharmacist, a kind woman named Helen, frowned slightly. "Your insurance hasn't gone through yet," she said gently. "It'll be $62 today." Emily's stomach dropped. She took out her wallet and counted. $52. Helen leaned forward, lowering her voice. "I can give you half the supply to get through the week." Emily hesitated, then shook her head. "I can't even cover that right now. Thank you though." She left with her hands empty and her throat tight. Outside, the wind had picked up. It carried a sharp, wet smell of snow not far off. She stood on the curb, watching cars glide through puddles, their headlights streaking gold on the wet asphalt. Her reflection in the glass window looked older than she remembered. "You should have kept the money last night," she thought. "At least then Layla would have her medicine." But another voice, her grandmother's, rose softly in her memory. "Long tong kong tong kem ji, kong you, kong you. Kindness costs nothing, darling, and sometimes that's all we have to give." She pressed her lips together and walked home, clutching her coat against the cold. The next morning came too early. The sky was white and heavy. Emily barely slept. She packed Layla's lunch with tired hands, then paused when she heard a faint cough from the bedroom. Layla stood in the doorway, hair messy, holding her inhaler. "It's almost out," she said. "I know, sweetheart. Can we get more soon?" "Yes," Emily said, forcing a smile. "Soon." When she walked Layla to school, she noticed 2 motorcycles parked across the street from their building. The men sitting on them wore dark jackets with the same winged crown she remembered. Her heart beat faster. One of the riders raised a hand, just a simple wave, and then looked away. Emily guided Layla quickly down the sidewalk. By late afternoon, the worry had grown too heavy to ignore. She sat on the edge of her bed, holding the black card between her fingers. The number gleamed faintly in the light from the window. Finally, she took a deep breath and sent a text. "This is Emily. The woman from the gas station. You said to call." The reply came almost instantly. "Hey Emily, Jace's been asking about you. Meet us at Murphy's Diner around 5. Just a short talk. Promise." She stared at the message for a long moment. Then she typed back, "Okay." The sky had already begun to darken when she dropped Layla off with Mrs. Johnson, who reluctantly agreed to watch her for an hour. "Don't stay long," Mrs. Johnson said. "And keep your phone on." "I will." The bus ride to Murphy's felt longer than usual. The window glass rattled softly with every bump, and the city light smeared into ribbons of yellow and red. She got off one stop early and walked the last few blocks. Her shoes squelched through shallow puddles. Inside the diner, the warmth hit her like a gentle wave. Coffee, grease, the sweet smell of pie. The same bell jingled overhead. Cole sat in a booth near the window, his jacket draped over the seat. He looked up and smiled when she came in. "Emily," he said, standing to shake her hand. "Didn't think you'd actually come." "I almost didn't," she admitted. He gestured for her to sit. "I get that. Not every day someone helps a guy like Jace and then hears from his crew the next morning." Emily glanced around. "How is he?" "Better. They said you probably saved his life." She looked down at her hands. "Anyone would have done the same." Cole's voice softened. "No, they wouldn't." He took a sip of coffee and studied her. "You got kids, right?" Emily hesitated, then nodded. "You remind me of my mom," he said. "She used to say kindness is the only thing that grows when you give it away." I didn't believe her till I met Jace. She smiled faintly. "Your mom sounds wise." She was past 5 years ago. There was a quiet moment between them, filled only by the sound of clinking dishes. Then Cole reached into his jacket and slid a small white envelope across the table. "He wanted me to give you this." Emily frowned. "What is it?" "Just a thank you." She pushed it back gently. "I can't take money for helping someone." "It's not money," he said. "Just an invitation. He wants to see you." She studied him. His eyes were steady, kind even. "Why?" "You'll have to ask him yourself." Outside, thunder rumbled far away. By the time she returned home, the wind had picked up. She found Mrs. Johnson sitting in the hallway, knitting, her radio playing old country songs. "Everything all right?" Mrs. Johnson asked. "I think so," Emily said. The older woman looked at her closely. "You got a good heart, Emily. But people take advantage of that." Emily smiled wearily. "Maybe. Or maybe they just need someone to trust first." Mrs. Johnson sighed. "You're too much like your grandma." "I hope so." That night, long after Layla had fallen asleep, Emily sat by the window again. The city lights twinkled like scattered coins. Her reflection in the glass looked calmer now, though the worry hadn't left her eyes. On the table lay the envelope Cole had given her. Inside was a business card, this one white, with the same winged crown logo, and a handwritten note, "Tomorrow, Murphy's noon." Emily read it twice, then set it down. For a long while she sat in silence, listening to the hum of the radiator and the faint rhythm of Layla's breathing from the other room. Her heart was a tangle of fear and curiosity, but under it all was a quiet certainty, like a small light refusing to go out. She whispered to herself, barely audible, "Kindness isn't safe, but it's worth it." And somewhere in the distance, she thought she heard the low steady roar of a motorcycle, fading into the night. The sound didn't frighten her, this time. It only made her wonder what tomorrow would bring. The next morning, Emily woke to a soft drizzle tapping against the window. The world was gray again, quiet, suspended, like it was waiting for something to begin. Layla still slept, her hand curled under her cheek. Emily brushed a kiss across her daughter's forehead before slipping out of bed. She dressed slowly, feeling a kind of nervous energy humming beneath her ribs. On the kitchen counter, the white card with the winged crown lay exactly where she'd left it. The handwriting on the back, "Tomorrow, Murphy's, noon," and looked simple enough, but it made her pulse quicken each time she saw it. She poured herself a cup of coffee and stood by the window, staring at the empty street. "You don't owe them anything," she told herself. "You helped, that's all." And yet she knew she would go. By the time she reached Murphy's diner, the rain had stopped, leaving the world glazed and shining. Puddles reflected the sign's red neon glow like streaks of fire across the asphalt. She paused outside the door, taking a breath before stepping in. The bell jingled and every head turned. There were at least 24 bikers scattered around the diner, men and women in leather jackets, all with the same emblem stitched across the back. But instead of rowdy noise or harsh laughter, there was quiet, the kind of silence filled with respect. Then, as she stood uncertainly in the doorway, they all rose. Chairs scraped softly against the floor as they stood in unison. Emily froze, her heart thudding. Cole stepped forward, smiling. "Emily Johnson," he said warmly. "Come on in, we've been waiting for you." She walked slowly toward him, her eyes darting from face to face. None looked unkind, just weathered, strong and sincere. At the far corner of the diner, in a booth by the window, sat Jace. His gray beard was trimmed now, his skin pale but alive. A blanket lay folded over his lap. He smiled when he saw her. "There she is," he said, voice raspy but steady, "the woman who saved an old fool's life." Emily sat across from him, her hands clasped in her lap. Cole slid into the seat beside Jace and nodded to the waitress. "Coffee for our guest, please." When the mug was set in front of her, Emily wrapped her fingers around it, grateful for the warmth. "I don't know why all this attention," she said softly. "I only did what anyone should do." Jace's eyes met hers. "That's where you're wrong, sweetheart. Not everyone does." He took a slow sip of water before setting the glass down. "When I hit the ground that night, I thought, well, this is it. I saw the lights, heard the engines, but no one moved. Then I felt someone grab my hand. You didn't think about who I was. You just acted." He smiled faintly. "Reminded me of someone." Emily tilted her head. "Who?" "My daughter," he said. The words came out quiet, heavy. Cole looked down at his hands. "She was 7 when we lost her." Jace continued. "Leukemia. We did everything we could, but the bills, they came faster than the hope. I was working 2 jobs, riding nights just to clear my head. By the time we found a clinic that could take her, it was too late." He stared at the mug in front of him. She used to say, "Daddy, people need to be brave for each other." I didn't understand that until after she was gone. Emily swallowed hard. The air in the diner felt still, like even the walls were listening. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I can't imagine." He shook his head gently. "You don't have to. You already understand." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a worn photo, faded edges, a little girl with bright eyes and 2 missing front teeth, standing beside a pink bicycle. "Her name was Lily," he said. "She'd be about Layla's age now." Emily took the photo carefully, her throat tightening. "She's beautiful." Jace smiled, eyes glistening. "Yeah." She was light in every room. After a long silence, Jace leaned back. "After she passed, I made a promise. I couldn't save Lily, but maybe I could save someone else, so I started Lily's legacy." Emily looked up. "The name on the card?" He nodded. "Yeah. We're not a gang, Miss Johnson. Not anymore. We're a family of folks who've been through rough patches. We help where we can: medical bills, food, shelter, sometimes just a shoulder. The jackets throw people off, but that's all right. We're used to earning trust the long way." Cole smiled. "We figured if we ride for something good, maybe Lily rides with us." Emily sat back, the pieces beginning to fit. "So that's why you wanted to see me?" "In part," Jace said, "but mostly I wanted to thank you in person. You reminded me why we started this. Sometimes even good men forget." She lowered her eyes. "I didn't mean to start anything." He chuckled softly. "That's how the best things begin." The waitress refilled their coffees, the smell of it mixed with rain drifting in from the open door. Jace studied her quietly. "You got a little girl, right? About 6? Emily nodded. "How's she doing?" "She's strong," Emily said. "But her asthma's been hard lately. I've been behind on her medicine." Jace's brow furrowed. "You paying for that out of pocket?" "Trying to," she said with a tired smile. Cole exchanged a glance with Jace. The older man's jaw tightened. "That shouldn't be a choice any mother has to make," Jace said softly. For a moment, no one spoke. Outside, thunder rolled low and slow. Then Jace leaned forward, his voice firm. "I want you to come tomorrow morning. There's something I need to show you. Don't worry, it's safe. You'll understand when you see it." Emily hesitated. "What is it?" He smiled faintly. "Call it faith in motion." Later, as she walked home, the rain had stopped completely. The city smelled of damp earth and fresh air. The puddles reflected the streetlights like tiny mirrors. Her heart felt oddly light, though her mind was crowded with thoughts. She thought of Lily's photo, the missing teeth, the pink helmet, the bright grin. She thought of her own little girl sleeping at home, the same innocence, the same courage in a small frame. Maybe kindness wasn't just about what you gave, it was about what you carried forward. That night, after putting Layla to bed, Emily made herself a cup of tea and sat by the window. The city below glowed faintly gold through the mist. Her grandmother's photo sat on the shelf, an old woman with kind eyes and a wide, steady smile. Emily spoke softly to her memory. "You'd like them, Grandma," she said. "They're rough around the edges, but they mean what they say." She stared at her reflection in the glass. "I don't know where this is going," she whispered, "but it feels like something real." Her thoughts drifted back to the bus station years ago. The sound of her grandmother falling, the strangers who just watched, the panic in her own young heart. That moment had shaped her, carved something deep. It was the reason she never walked past someone in need. She remembered kneeling beside her grandmother, crying, whispering, "Please, someone help." No one had. The memory still burned, even now. And maybe that's why she had run toward Jace that night, because in her heart she'd been running toward her grandmother too. A tear slid down her cheek. She let it fall unashamed. "You can't change the past," she thought, "but maybe you can answer it with something better." The next morning, she met Cole outside the diner. The sun was out now, bright against the wet pavement. He wore sunglasses and a smile. "You ready?" he asked. "I think so." He handed her a helmet. "Hop on." She hesitated. "I haven't been on a bike since high school." "You'll be fine. Trust me." As they rode through the city, the wind caught her hair and the cold air rushed against her face. It felt like the world widening again after being closed for too long. They turned down a quiet street lined with small houses and stopped in front of a large warehouse painted white, with a simple sign over the door, "Lily's Legacy Outreach." Inside, the air smelled of coffee, oil and new paint. Volunteers moved among tables stacked with boxes of food and donated clothes. A banner on the wall read, "Kindness is a road that never ends." Emily stood there, speechless. Jace appeared from behind a desk, walking slowly with a cane. "Welcome," he said. "This is what we do." He guided her through the space rows of shelves labeled food drive, medical aid, children's supplies. There were photos pinned to a board, families smiling, houses rebuilt, letters of thanks in careful handwriting. Emily felt something deep inside her shift. This wasn't charity. It was dignity, rebuilt one small act at a time. Jace stopped beside her. "You belong here, Emily. You've got the heart for it." She turned to him, startled. "Me? You think we build this by muscle alone?" He smiled. "We build it by heart, by people like you." Her eyes filled. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it," he said. "And tomorrow, no matter what happens, don't be afraid. Some folks in your neighborhood might not understand us yet, but we'll show them." She nodded slowly. "Okay." That night, back home, she couldn't sleep. The house felt alive with quiet energy. Through the window, she could see the city lights flickering. She thought about all the lives connected by invisible threads of help and trust. She thought of Jace's tired smile, Lily's bright photo, Cole's steady kindness. And then she thought of her grandmother's words again. "Kindness costs nothing, but it can change everything." Emily whispered into the dark, "Maybe it's time it changed me too." She looked toward Layla's bed, where her daughter slept soundly, and felt her chest swell with something she hadn't felt in years, hope that tomorrow might be better. She didn't know what awaited her, but she knew one thing: whatever it was, she would face it with open hands. Because kindness, she finally understood, wasn't a single act. It was a way of living, a light you carried even when the road ahead was still uncertain. And with that thought warming her heart, Emily closed her eyes and let the night hold her gently until morning. Morning came soft and cold, the kind that makes the world look freshly washed. A low sun climbed over the rooftops, spilling pale gold light across the street. Emily woke to the sound first, a deep rumble that trembled through the floorboards like distant thunder. For a moment she thought it was another storm rolling in, but when she pulled aside the curtain, she froze. The street below shimmered with chrome. Dozens, no hundreds of motorcycles lined both sides of the block, their riders standing beside them in neat rows. Leather jackets, black boots, silver helmets catching the light. The winged crown glinted on every back. Layla ran to the window, eyes wide. "Mom, there's a parade." Emily's heart pounded. She glanced toward the street where neighbors were gathering. Mrs. Johnson with her shawl clutched tight, Mr. Rodriguez shaking his head in disbelief. Fear hung thick in the air. "What are they doing here?" Mrs. Johnson called, her voice sharp. "You see, Emily, I told you." But Emily didn't answer. She slipped on her coat, took Layla's hand and stepped outside. The cold air bit at her cheeks. The engines idled in a slow, steady growl that somehow didn't sound threatening, more like a heartbeat, powerful but steady. At the far end of the street, a familiar figure stepped forward. Jace, leaning on his cane, his leather jacket zipped halfway, stood tall against the wind. Cole flanked him, holding a folded banner under one arm. Jace raised his voice. "Folks, I know this looks like something out of a movie, but we're not here to cause trouble. We're here to return a favor, to repay kindness with kindness." The murmurs from the crowd quieted. Mrs. Johnson took a step forward, her voice trembling. "You scared us half to death." Jace nodded. "I'm sorry for that, ma'am. We don't mean fear, we mean help." He turned toward Emily. "Miss Johnson, would you come here please?" Emily hesitated, feeling every eye on her. Then she walked forward, Layla clutching her hand. Jace smiled at the little girl. "You must be Layla." "Yes sir," she whispered. "Your mama's a brave woman," he said gently. Cole stepped forward and unfurled the banner. The wind caught it for a moment before it straightened. "Lily's Legacy, Community Day of Thanks." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Jace's voice carried strong now. "A few weeks back, I had a heart attack at a gas station. Everyone there looked away, except this woman. She spent her last $8 to save me. Didn't ask who I was, didn't care what I wore, just acted out of kindness." He turned to face the neighbors. "That kind of goodness deserves more than words." He nodded to Cole, who handed him a thick envelope. "This," Jace said, holding it out to Emily, "is a small start. $25,000, to cover your rent, your car, your daughter's medicine, whatever you need." Emily's eyes filled instantly. "I can't." "You already did," Jace interrupted gently. Now let us. A hush fell over the crowd. Then from the far end of the street, two riders wheeled forward a freshly repaired sedan, Emily's car, gleaming and whole. A big red ribbon was tied across the hood. Layla squealed, "Mom, it's fixed." Emily covered her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. Cole grinned, "Got a new transmission and tires too. She's good as new." Jace wasn't done. He nodded again, and another rider brought forward a simple white envelope. "In here," Jace said, "is an offer of employment. Community Outreach Coordinator, for Lily's legacy, full salary, benefits, insurance. We'd like you to help us connect with families in need, the way you connected with me." Emily could barely speak. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Jace said softly. "Then you can spend your days helping others without worrying how to keep the lights on." She pressed a hand over her heart. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll do it." The crowd erupted in applause. Mrs. Johnson wiped her eyes with her shawl. Mr. Rodriguez clapped her on the shoulder. The tension that had hung in the air all week melted like frost in sunlight. As the applause quieted, Jace lifted his hand for silence. "There's one more thing." He gestured toward a flatbed truck parked nearby. Workers pulled off a tarp, revealing a large wooden sign with painted letters, "Johnson House, Community Resource Center." Emily stared, stunned. Jace's voice wavered just slightly. "This block's got a lot of heart. We want to build something here to honor that, to honor you. Johnson House will be a place for job training, food distribution, medical support, and shelter for families in crisis, all free, no judgment." A collective murmur swept through the neighbors. Then slowly, Mrs. Johnson began to clap again, soft at first, then louder. Others joined until the sound filled the street. Emily turned to Jace. "You didn't have to." He smiled. "Neither did you." By afternoon, the neighborhood had transformed. The riders set up tables of food and coffee. Volunteers carried in boxes of groceries, winter coats, and children's toys. Laughter began to mingle with the deep purr of engines. Layla helped pass out apples with two of the riders, giggling as she handed each one over like a prize. Mrs. Johnson stood beside Emily, shaking her head in wonder. "I'll admit it, dear, I was wrong about them." Emily smiled. "Maybe we all were." Mrs. Johnson chuckled. "You know, my heart hasn't felt this full in years." Cole came by, handing out cups of cocoa. "Turns out kindness makes pretty good noise, doesn't it?" Emily laughed. "The best kind." That evening, the crowd began to thin. The sun slipped behind the buildings, turning the sky a soft peach. The riders started their engines one by one, waving goodbye to the neighbors who'd once eyed them with fear. Jace lingered a little longer. He took Layla's small hand and pressed a folded photograph into it. "This was Lily," he said gently. "She'd be about your age now." Layla studied the photo and smiled. "She looks happy." "She was," Jace said softly, "and she'd be proud of your mama." Then he looked at Emily. "Keep the chain going. That's all I ask." She nodded, eyes bright. "I will." Weeks passed, and the sound of construction filled the neighborhood. Trucks came and went, framing and brickwork rising where an old lot had stood. The sign, "Johnson House," was mounted at last, bright blue letters gleaming in the morning sun. Inside, shelves were lined with canned goods, a small clinic room took shape, and a computer lab waited for job training classes. Emily worked every day, organizing volunteers, filling out forms, learning to lead. Her voice, once hesitant, grew sure. People came to her with problems, and she found ways to help, sometimes with money, sometimes just with time and care. One afternoon, she sat with Mrs. Patterson, an 80-year-old woman whose heart medication had run out. Emily filled out the assistant's paperwork herself and handed her the bottle later that week. Tears welled in the older woman's eyes. "You saved my life, dear." Emily smiled. "No, ma'am, just keeping the circle turning." Spring came, and with it, the grand opening. A banner stretched across the front steps, "Johnson House, 1 year strong." Balloons bobbed in the breeze, children ran in the yard, and the scent of grilled corn drifted through the air. Emily stood at the podium, her heart full and her hands steady. Jace sat in the front row, his cane resting across his knees. Cole leaned on a rail nearby, smiling proudly. She looked out at the crowd, neighbors, friends, strangers who had once kept their distance. "Last year," she began, I had $8 to my name. I didn't know what would come next, but I did know one thing: kindness is never wasted. That night at the gas station, I didn't think about what it might cost me. I just remembered my grandmother's words: kindness doesn't cost a thing, and sometimes it's all we have to give. Her voice wavered, but she continued, "Since then, I've learned that kindness isn't just something we give once. It's something we build together. Every day, every person, every open door." She smiled down at Layla, standing proudly in the front row. "This place isn't mine, it's ours." Johnson House is proof that compassion can turn fear into trust, and strangers into neighbors. The crowd applauded, the sound rolling through the spring air like music. When it quieted, Emily stepped down from the podium and walked to the edge of the crowd, where a man stood off to the side, nervous, his coat too thin, a cardboard sign tucked under his arm that read "Need help, anything helps." Emily reached into her pocket and pressed a $50 bill into his hand. "Here," she said softly, "just make sure you pass it on when you can." The man looked stunned. "Thank you, ma'am, I will." She smiled. "I know you will." That evening, as the celebration wound down, Emily stood outside Johnson House watching the sun sink behind the city skyline. The air was filled with laughter, clinking cups, and the faint sound of engines starting somewhere far away. Jace joined her, leaning on his cane. "You did good today," he said. "We all did." He nodded. "Lily would have liked this." Emily smiled. "Then it's perfect." They stood in companionable silence for a while. Then Jace looked at her with a half grin. "You know, I think your grandma and my Lily are probably swapping stories somewhere right now." Emily laughed quietly. "Probably about how stubborn we are." "Yay," he said. "The good kind of stubborn." Later that night, after the lights were out and the volunteers had gone home, Emily locked up and walked down the block with Layla's hand in hers. The air smelled faintly of rain again, but the sky was clear, stars bright against the dark. Layla looked up at her. "Mom, what does pass it on mean?" Emily squeezed her hand gently. "It means when someone gives you something kind, a hand, a smile, a bit of help, you don't keep it. You find someone else who needs it, and you give it to them." Layla thought about that for a moment. "Like a gift that never runs out." "Exactly," Emily said, smiling. "A gift that keeps the world warm." They turned the corner toward home, the sound of laughter from Johnson House fading behind them. And for the first time, in a long time, Emily felt completely at peace. No fear, no worry, just quiet gratitude. She glanced down at Layla and whispered, "Kindness is never a mistake." Layla smiled sleepily. "I know, Mom." The street lights flickered softly as they walked, hand in hand, into the calm glow of evening. Two small figures carrying the light forward, one act of kindness at a time.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.